The first rays of dawn were just beginning to kiss the sky, painting it with delicate strokes of pink and gold, when Adrian Cole emerged from his lavish home. Briefcase in hand, he braced himself for another grueling day of meetings and endless conference calls. At 38, Adrian was the picture of polished success, his dark brown hair meticulously slicked back, a testament to his unwavering control. He wore a slate blue suit, a masterpiece of bespoke tailoring that clung to his frame with precision. Indeed, everything about Adrian Cole exuded a sense of exactitude, calculated composure, and a deliberate aloofness. His residence, perched prominently on the exclusive street, was a testament to modern architectural prowess, a stunning composition of glass and steel that his architect had hailed as a pinnacle of minimalist design. Adrian, his housekeeper, found it peaceful, a sanctuary of calm amidst the chaos of his life. His ex-wife, however, had deemed it cold, a reflection, she'd claimed, of the man who resided within. That was 3 years ago, before she'd walked away, taking with her half his fortune and leaving him with the stinging realization that he was, in her scathing assessment, emotionally unavailable and incapable of forming genuine connections. Adrian's response had been characteristically resolute. He threw himself into his work with even greater fervor, acquired an even grander house, and erected impenetrable emotional walls to ensure that no one would ever again have the opportunity to level such accusations. As Adrian approached his car, a sleek, black luxury sedan that commanded a price tag exceeding most people's annual income, he was surprised to see a small figure standing hesitantly at the edge of his driveway. It was a little girl, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, with light brown hair arranged in an elaborate updo, adorned with what appeared to be tiny jeweled clips. She wore a bright pink dress beneath a cheerful yellow raincoat and carried a pink backpack with a small, well-loved stuffed rabbit clipped to its side. Adrian recognized her as Isabella, the daughter of his neighbors, the Hendersons. They had moved in 6 months prior, and Adrian had made it a point to avoid any interaction beyond a curt, impersonal nod when their paths happened to cross. He preferred to maintain his distance from everyone, neighbors included. "Good morning," the little girl chirped, her voice bright and cheerful, as if it were perfectly ordinary to be standing in a stranger's driveway at 7 o'clock in the morning. Adrian offered a brief, perfunctory nod and moved to get into his car, but the little girl, undeterred by his obvious dismissal, took a tentative step forward. "Will you walk me to school?" she asked, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and childlike innocence. "It's my first day of kindergarten, and Mommy can't walk with me because she has to leave really early for her job, and Daddy's away on a business trip. The bus won't pick me up for another hour, but I'm ready now, and I'm really excited to go." Adrian stared at her, momentarily speechless, caught off guard by the unexpected request. "You want me to walk you to school?" "Yes, please," Bella pleaded. "Mommy said you live next door, and you seem like a responsible adult. Plus, you're always dressed really nice, so you must be important. And important people are usually good at getting things done. Walking me to school would be getting something done." Her logic, though delivered with the disarming simplicity of a child, was oddly compelling. Yet, Adrian felt an immediate surge of resistance. He simply didn't have time for this. He had a crucial board meeting scheduled for 8:30. He had investors to impress, deals to finalize and profits to maximize. He had a meticulously structured schedule that most certainly did not include escorting small children to kindergarten. "I'm sure your mother can arrange something else," Adrian said curtly, attempting to shut down the conversation. "I have important business to attend to." "Mommy already left," the little girl interrupted, her brow furrowing slightly. "She works at the hospital, and she has to be there really early for her shift. She left me breakfast and said Mrs. Patterson from across the street would check on me in an hour, but I don't want to wait. I want to go to school now. All my new school supplies are in my backpack, and I have new crayons and everything." Adrian glanced at his watch. The kindergarten was only 2 blocks away. If he walked briskly, it would take at most 10 minutes there and back. He would still have ample time to reach his office before the start of the meeting. "What's your name?" he asked, already regretting the decision he knew he was about to make. "Isabella Rose Henderson, but everyone calls me Bella." "What's your name?" "Adrian Cole." "That's a very serious name," Bella observed. "Do people call you anything shorter, like Andy or Aid?" "No, they call me Mr. Cole or Adrian. Nothing else." "Okay, Mr. Adrian," she said, tilting her head slightly. "Will you walk me to school, please? I promise I'll walk fast, and I won't talk too much if you don't want me to." Adrian sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. "Fine, but we need to leave now and you need to keep up. I have a meeting I cannot be late for." Bella's face lit up with such unrestrained, pure joy that Adrian felt a strange, unfamiliar sensation twist in his chest. "Thank you, Mr. Adrian. You're the nicest, grumpy man I've ever met." "I'm not grumpy," Adrian said automatically, the denial sounding weak even to his own ears, though he was well aware that his reputation in the neighborhood was precisely that. The grumpy millionaire who never smiled, never socialized, and made it abundantly clear that he wanted nothing to do with anyone. As they walked down the perfectly manicured sidewalk, Bella chattered incessantly, completely disregarding her promise not to talk too much. She shared her excitement about starting kindergarten, the new friend she hoped to make, her favorite color, pink, obviously, her stuffed rabbit named Carrot, her mother who worked tirelessly as a nurse, and her father who traveled constantly for work but called every night to say goodnight. Adrian mostly responded with grunts, checking his watch repeatedly and mentally calculating how long this unexpected detour was taking. But somewhere around the halfway point, he found himself actually listening, drawn in by the innocent enthusiasm of her voice. "Mommy says kindergarten is where you learn all the important stuff," Bella was saying, her eyes sparkling with anticipation, "like how to read and how to be kind to people and how to share and all that. She says the smartest people are the ones who are kind. Is that true, Mr. Adrian? Are you kind?" The question caught Adrian completely off guard, forcing him to confront a side of himself he rarely acknowledged. I don't know," he stammered, momentarily thrown. "I suppose that depends on who you ask." "Well, you're walking me to school even though you didn't want to," Bella pointed out matter-of-factly. That seems kind to me. I'm doing it because you needed help and your mother wasn't available. It's not kindness. It's just practical. But you could have said no, Bella persisted. You could have just gotten in your fancy car and driven away. But you didn't. You helped me instead. That's being kind. Adrian found himself without a response, disarmed by the simple, irrefutable logic of a child. They walked the rest of the way in relative silence, with Bella occasionally pointing out interesting things. A bird perched on a branch, a brightly colored flower, a particularly sleek car parked on the street. When they reached the kindergarten, a cheerful building painted in vibrant colors with a playground visible behind a fence, Bella turned to Adrian, her face radiant with a huge smile. Thank you for walking me to school, Mr. Adrian. You're my first friend in the neighborhood. I'm not your friend, Adrian corrected, a hint of softness creeping into his voice despite himself. I'm your neighbor who walked you to school once, that's all. Friends can be neighbors who walk you to school, Bella insisted. That's what Mommy says. Anyway, thank you. Maybe tomorrow you can walk me again. Tomorrow, you'll take the bus like your mother arranged, Adrian stated firmly, attempting to re-establish his boundaries. Okay, Bella said, her enthusiasm undimmed. But if I need someone to walk me again, can I ask you? Adrian wanted to say no, wanted to draw a firm line and prevent any further encroachment into his carefully constructed world. But looking at this small girl with her hopeful eyes and her bright yellow raincoat, he found himself saying, if it's an emergency, only if it's an emergency. Yay, okay, bye Mr. Adrian. Have a good day at your important business. She skipped toward the school entrance, where a teacher was greeting arriving students. Adrian watched until he was certain she'd made it inside safely. Then he checked his watch, swore under his breath, and speed-walked back to his house to retrieve his car. He was 7 minutes late to his board meeting, and his CFO, a man who knew him better than most, gave him a curious, questioning look. Adrian Cole was never late. Ever. The next morning, Adrian deliberately left for work 15 minutes earlier than usual, hoping to avoid any potential encounter with Bella. But as he backed out of his driveway, he saw her sitting on her front porch, dressed and ready for school, her pink backpack beside her. She waved enthusiastically when she saw him, and Adrian told himself to just keep driving. He had things to do, deals to close, and an empire to run. He wasn't a babysitter or a neighbor who got involved in other people's lives. But he found himself stopping the car, the engine idling as he rolled down his window. Why are you sitting out here? It's barely 7 o'clock. Mommy had to leave early again, Bella explained. I'm waiting for the bus, but it doesn't come for another hour. I didn't want to bother you, so I'm just sitting here. I brought a book to read. She held up a well-worn copy of The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Adrian looked at this small child, sitting alone on her porch with a book, trying so hard to be independent and not be a bother. And he heard himself say, the words surprising even him, get in the car, I'll drive you to school. Bella's face lit up, her eyes sparkling with pure delight. Really? In your fancy car? Yes, in my fancy car, Adrian confirmed, a reluctant smile tugging at the corners of his lips. But hurry up, I have a conference call at 8. Bella scrambled into the back seat, buckling herself in with the competence of a child who'd been thoroughly taught car safety. As Adrian drove the short distance to the school, she chattered away again, this time about her first day of kindergarten and all the things she'd learned. We learned the alphabet song, but I already knew that, she announced proudly. And we learned how to line up properly. And my teacher's name is Miss Roberts, and she's really nice. And I made a friend named Marcus who likes rabbits, too. And we painted pictures with our hands, and mine was a tree. That's nice, Adrian said, only half listening as he navigated the morning traffic. Mr. Adrian, Bella said suddenly, her voice filled with innocent curiosity. Why don't you have any kids? You'd be a good daddy because you're very responsible, and you have a nice car. The question hit Adrian like a physical blow, taking him completely by surprise. That's a personal question, Bella, he said, his voice sharper than he intended. We don't ask people personal questions. Why not? Bella persisted, her brow furrowed in confusion. How do you get to know people if you don't ask them questions? You can ask questions that aren't invasive, Adrian explained, struggling to find the right words for a 5-year-old. What's invasive? It means too personal, too private. Oh, okay, Bella said, her voice subdued. Sorry, I didn't mean to be invasive. She was quiet for a moment, then added in a small, hesitant voice. But I still think you'd be a good daddy. Adrian dropped her off at the school, watched her skip inside, and drove to his office feeling strangely unsettled. A disquiet he couldn't quite explain. That night, he found himself thinking about Bella's question. Why didn't he have kids? The answer, he knew, was complicated, tangled with layers of ambition, fear, and regret. His ex-wife had wanted children, had envisioned a life filled with the joys and challenges of parenthood. But Adrian had always demurred, claiming it wasn't the right time. He needed to focus on the company to build financial security, to be certain he could provide the kind of life his own father never had. But the truth, he had to admit, was that he had been afraid. Afraid of failing, of not being good enough, of repeating the mistakes of his own emotionally distant father. He'd been paralyzed by the fear of inadequacy, and so he'd chosen to avoid the risk altogether. The next morning, and the morning after that, and the morning after that, Adrian found himself leaving early to give Bella rides to school. It gradually transformed into a routine, a quiet, comfortable ritual that punctuated the start of each day. He told himself it was temporary, just until Mrs. Henderson's schedule changed, just until Bella was comfortable taking the bus. But weeks turned into months, and somehow, almost imperceptibly, Adrian found himself looking forward to those morning drives. Bella's constant chatter filled his usually silent car with life, injecting warmth and laughter into the sterile environment he had so carefully cultivated. She regaled him with tales of her day, her friends, her dreams, her unfiltered thoughts on everything from why the sky was blue to whether dragons could be real if people just believed hard enough. And slowly, almost against his will, Despite his best intentions to remain detached, Adrian found himself getting attached. He started asking Bella questions about her day, genuinely interested in her responses. He remembered the names of her friends and teachers. When she mentioned loving a particular book about a mischievous rabbit, he ordered it online and left it on her doorstep anonymously. A secret act of kindness that brought a surprising amount of satisfaction. Mrs. Henderson eventually noticed Adrian's daily kindness and knocked on his door one Saturday morning to express her gratitude. "Mr. Cole," she said, her eyes filled with heartfelt thanks and a hint of tears. "I can't tell you how much it means that you've been driving Bella to school. I've been trying to adjust my schedule, but the hospital has been understaffed, and they keep asking me to come in early. Knowing that Bella is safe with you in the mornings has been such a relief." "It's on my way to work," Adrian said gruffly, attempting to downplay his role. "It's not an inconvenience. It's more than that," Mrs. Henderson insisted, her voice softening. "Bella talks about you all the time. She calls you her friend. She says you're teaching her big words and telling her about how businesses work and listening to all her stories. You've been kind to her in a way that, well, a way that not many people are these days. I'm just giving her a ride. That's all," Adrian said, stubbornly clinging to his facade of indifference. But it wasn't all, and Adrian knew it. He had been irrevocably changed by this small girl with her bright yellow raincoat and her boundless optimism, her unwavering belief in the goodness of the world. She had reminded him that there was more to life than quarterly earnings and business acquisitions, that human connection mattered, that being present for someone, truly present, was more valuable than any deal he could close. One morning, Bella got into the car looking unusually quiet, her usual bubbly energy noticeably absent. "What's wrong?" Adrian asked, surprised by how quickly he'd noticed her mood shift. "Tomorrow is Father's Day at school," Bella said, her voice barely a whisper. "We're supposed to bring our dads or a special grown-up man in our life to have breakfast with us. But Daddy is on a business trip in Singapore, and he can't come home. Mommy said maybe Uncle Pete could come, but he lives really far away." She looked at Adrian with those hopeful eyes, the same eyes that had melted his defenses months ago. "Mr. Adrian, would you come to Father's Day breakfast? As my special grown-up man friend? I know you're really busy with your important business, but it's only from 8 to 9, and there will be pancakes." Adrian's first instinct was to refuse, to erect his walls once more and retreat into the safety of his carefully controlled world. This was getting too personal, too attached. He'd already crossed too many boundaries, allowed this little girl to get too close. But looking at Bella's face, at the vulnerability and hope etched on her features, he found himself unable to say no. The words simply wouldn't form in his throat. "What time should I be there?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Bella's face transformed, the cloud of sadness instantly lifting to reveal a radiant smile. "Really? You'll really come? If it's important to you," Adrian said, the words resonating with a newfound honesty. "Then yes, I'll be there. It's really, really, really important to me," Bella declared, her voice bubbling with joy. "You're the best grumpy friend ever." "I'm not grumpy," Adrian muttered, the denial lacking its usual conviction. But he was smiling despite himself, a genuine, unforced smile that reached all the way to his eyes. The next morning, Adrian found himself in a kindergarten classroom decorated with hand-drawn cards and paper flowers, sitting at a tiny table with Bella and eating pancakes that had been cooked by parent volunteers. Around the room, other fathers and father figures were doing the same, and Adrian felt an unexpected sense of peace, a quiet contentment he hadn't experienced in years. Bella proudly presented him with a handmade card that said, "Thank you for being my friend." It featured a drawing of what was apparently Adrian, easily identifiable by his fancy suit, holding hands with a small girl in a yellow raincoat. "This is beautiful, Bella," Adrian said, genuinely touched by the gesture. "Thank you. Do you really like it?" Bella asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. "I worked really hard on it." "I really like it," Adrian assured her. "I'm going to put it in my office." "Really?" Bella squealed, clapping her hands with delight. "On your desk where you do important business?" "Really?" Adrian confirmed, his heart swelling with affection. After breakfast, as Adrian was preparing to leave for his actual office, Miss Roberts, Bella's teacher, pulled him aside. "Mr. Cole," she said, her voice warm and sincere. "I just wanted to say thank you for coming today. Bella has talked about you nonstop. She was so excited to have you here. You've made a real difference in her life." "I just drive her to school," Adrian said, uncomfortable with the praise. "You do more than that, Mr. Cole," Miss Roberts gently corrected. "You show up, you listen to her, you make her feel valued. That's what matters." As Adrian drove to his office, Bella's card resting on the passenger seat beside him, he thought about Miss Roberts' words. He'd spent so many years believing that success meant financial achievement, that matching meant having influence in boardrooms and making deals. But maybe matching was simpler than that. Maybe it was just showing up for a small girl who needed someone to walk her to school. That evening, Adrian did something he almost never did. He left work early and stopped by a toy store. He found a stuffed rabbit that looked remarkably like Carrot and bought it, along with a beautifully illustrated children's book about rabbits going to school. When he left the package on the Henderson's doorstep with a note that read, "For Bella, from her friend, Mr. Adrian," he felt something he hadn't felt in years, a deep sense of purpose, a genuine feeling that he mattered. Not because of his money or his position, but because he'd made a small girl smile. Mrs. Henderson sent him a photo that night of Bella hugging the new rabbit, her face beaming with unadulterated joy. The accompanying text read, "She says you're the best friend she's ever had. Thank you for seeing her. Thank you for caring." Adrian sat alone in his minimalist living room, looking at that photo and realizing that his ex-wife had been wrong. He wasn't incapable of genuine connection. He'd just been too afraid to try, too busy building walls to protect himself from potential hurt. But Bella had walked into his life, quite literally, and had refused to accept his defenses, his carefully constructed distance. She'd seen past the grumpy exterior to the person underneath, the person he had almost forgotten existed. And in doing so, she'd reminded him how to be human again. how to open his heart and embrace the simple joys of connection. 6 months after that first unexpected morning walk to school, Adrian Cole was a different person. He still ran his company with precision and skill, still closed deals and impressed investors. But he also left work early sometimes to attend Bella's school events, cheering her on during her class play and beaming with pride as she accepted an award for perfect attendance. He took her to the zoo on Saturdays when her mother had long shifts, marveling at her unbridled enthusiasm as she watched the monkeys and lions. He taught her about numbers and helped her practice reading, patiently guiding her through the challenges of phonics and sight words. And when Mrs. Henderson's ex-husband, Bella's father, made a tentative attempt to reconnect with his daughter after years of being minimally present, it was Adrian who helped Mrs. Henderson navigate the difficult conversations about boundaries and Bella's well-being, offering his unwavering support and guidance. "You've become family, Adrian," Mrs. Henderson told him one evening, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how it happened, but you have. Bella loves you. I love you. You're the stable male presence in her life that I've been worried she'd never have." Adrian felt his throat tighten, a lump forming that made it difficult to speak. "I love her, too," he managed to say, his voice raspy with emotion. "I didn't expect to, but I do. Would you consider?" Mrs. Henderson hesitated, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I mean, this might be too much to ask, but would you consider being her godfather, officially? I'd like to update my will and my emergency contacts, and I'd like to name you as someone who'd care for Bella if something happened to me. You don't have to answer now. Take some time to think about it." "Yes," Adrian said immediately, without a moment's hesitation. "Yes, I would be honored." That Christmas, Adrian Cole, who'd spent the previous several Christmases alone in his cavernous, sterile house, found himself hosting a holiday dinner for Mrs. Henderson, Bella, and a few other neighbors he'd gotten to know through Bella. His minimalist house was filled with laughter and music and the warm chaos of people who cared about each other, a stark contrast to the solitary existence he had grown accustomed to. As he watched Bella excitedly show the other children her new dollhouse, a meticulously crafted gift from Adrian that had taken him 3 frustrating but ultimately rewarding hours to assemble, Mrs. Henderson came to stand beside him, a soft smile gracing her lips. "You know what Bella asked me the other day?" she said, her voice barely audible above the festive din. "What?" Adrian asked, his heart skipping a beat. "She asked if someday you might want to be her daddy for real," Mrs. Henderson confessed, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath catch in his throat. "Not just her friend who walks her to school, but her actual daddy." Adrian felt his heart skip a beat, a wave of emotion washing over him that threatened to overwhelm him. "What did you tell her?" he managed to ask, his voice tight with anticipation. "I told her that family doesn't always look the way we expect it to," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice filled with love and wisdom. "That sometimes the people who aren't related to us by blood become the most important people in our lives. That you love her very much, even if the exact nature of your relationship is still being figured out." She looked at Adrian with an expression he couldn't quite read, a mixture of hope, vulnerability, and something that felt suspiciously like affection. "For what it's worth, I wouldn't object to you being more involved," she added softly. "I mean, to you being more than just a family friend, if that's something you'd ever want." Adrian looked at this remarkable woman who had become so important to him, at the little girl who had single-handedly transformed his entire life, and he realized, with a certainty that resonated deep within his soul, that he did want that. He wanted more than just morning drives and weekend visits, more than just the comfortable friendship they had forged. He wanted to be part of their family officially, completely, permanently. He wanted to be the man they could always count on, the man who would always be there to love and protect them. "I'd like that very much," he said quietly, his voice filled with a sincerity that resonated with every fiber of his being. They took things slowly, dating properly while making sure Bella was comfortable with the changes. But Bella, who'd apparently been hoping for this outcome all along, was thrilled, her excitement radiating outward like sunshine. "I told you Mr. Adrian would be a good daddy," she announced to anyone who would listen, her voice filled with unwavering conviction. "I knew it from the very first day, when he walked me to school, even though he was grumpy and busy." 2 years after that first fateful morning when Bella had stood in Adrian's driveway, asking him to walk her to school, Adrian Cole stood in that same driveway, no longer the same man.